time to look at our favorite ASUS Z87 workstation motherboard. So Wendell, you've been playing with this one a lot, and I think this actually is possibly my favorite full-size Z87 motherboard out of all of the Z87 motherboards. I like it better than the ones in the ROG because it has a lot of those features as far as like the VREGs and the power regulation goes. But it also has some features for productivity and some hardcore stuff like 2 Intel NICs. I love that. Gotta love those Intel NICs. Wendell and I are just gonna chit-chat about this motherboard, and you guys can come and hang out and maybe glean something from it. And in the comments we can discuss it further. So
I really like this motherboard, and I really like it because it has the power delivery system of the ROG motherboard, but it's got the serious, I'm going to get some work done with the Z87 platform features, but it's still the Z87 chipset, so you can do overclocking and things like that, because Intel's really trying to segment away the pro features from the enthusiast features. And so, like, this is, even though this is a workstation board, it doesn't support ECC. And that's actually an Intel chipset limitation with the Z87. They want you to get the Q chipset or something like that that's more limited, the same way that they're taking out virtualization and things like that from the K parts, like the Intel, 3770K or 4770K, or, the overclockable parts don't have, like, the directed I/O virtualization. And so now they're taking away ECC. But other than that, this is a really nice workstation board that has a lot of enthusiast features.
So it's kind of interesting. I mean, this is like you just said, it's not ASUS doing this. And we did mention the fact that, I guess it was back when JJ was in town, we did say that this does support ECC memory.
Well, it's really interesting because the early versions of the chipset apparently did support ECC, and so a lot of the people involved with the engineering of this were like, wait, what? It doesn't support ECC? And there's ECC RAM that's listed in the compatibility list on the website, but they're adding a footnote that says, well, I mean, it'll post with ECC, but the ECC function doesn't actually happen because it's blocked or whatever, which is silly. Thanks, Intel.
Before we go any further, I really want to identify exactly who this is for. This is for an enthusiast gamer who wants to get work done. It's like an enthusiast workstation.
You can run 4 PCI Express cards at a by 8 configuration.
If you want to go up from there, well, you're going to need to do something like my personal build. And there's a video coming very soon on my personal build. Now, I'm using the P9 X79 WS motherboard, and that's X79. You've got a lot more lanes, and I don't really need the lanes just yet, but I'm going to be adding a few things into my system in the future. So I like that one. I also love socket 2011 for, it's more expensive, but it's a lot more fun.
And if you want to go up from that, you can do a dual socket 2011 Xeon workstation, and we've got a video on that. And that's based on the Z9 ASUS motherboard, and that's dual Xeon. So it's like having 2 i7s, but it's Xeon because that's what Xeon's for.
Now let's talk a little bit about the validation. Now they've tested this motherboard with more than anything else in the Z87 line. They've tested it with more RAID cards. They tested it with, just more options than anything else. So that's another thing you're getting with this. You're getting something that you know is going to work with more professional add-ons.
Yeah, if you've got like a high-speed HDMI capture, 10 gigabit Ethernet, multiple video cards, maybe you've got one of the, maybe you've got a Tesla, or maybe you've got the new Xeon Phi, whatever crazy add-in card, high-performance RAID controllers, stuff like that. That's really what this board's about. I mean, you can run quad SLI in this, but really it's not meant for quad SLI. Like, if you're going to do, quad Titans in this thing, just get an X79 or the Z9 dual socket 2011. This is more for, I'm going to run my 10 gig Ethernet port with my high-speed RAID controller and a video card or 2.
Yeah, 1 or 2 video cards with that would be just fine in this, because you do have limited resources. We have a PLX chip to provide some additional lanes back and forth. And if you're running something like that, you're almost never going to be, needing all those lanes at the same time. So the PLX chip will take care of all that, and you'll be happy.
I really think this would make this is a good platform for video processing. Even though it doesn't support ECC RAM, it's got a Marvell PCIe 9320 controller. This is a significant step up over Marvell controllers of generations gone by. And this controller with SSD caching, plus you've got 6 other 6 gigabit per second SATA ports, that plus the PLX chip for 10 gigabit Ethernet, and a pretty decent workstation video card, or 770, 780, or 7870, or whatever. That would work really well and be pretty low cost. I mean, the price to performance ratio here it's really good.
Yeah, and also depending on what you're doing with this, if you get a non-K part, you can do virtualization, So it's kind of weird that they took the virtualization out, but that's another Intel thing where they're trying to separate the enthusiasts from the people who want to get stuff done. Intel, don't you know we're the same people? A lot of
they
the
times. They do make socket. We tested this with a Xeon 1230, I think, and that works pretty well, and that has all the virtualization extensions and everything. But you can get the 4770 non-K and do VTD with directed I/O and some features like that for virtualization. But really, the thing that drives it home for me on this platform with all the SATA connectivity and the 4 lanes is video. Like if you have editors or something and they're just doing front end video collection and video processing, this is a pretty solid machine. It's pretty cheap.
And next, let's touch on overclocking because some of the enthusiasts are going to grab this and they're going to grab a K part and they're just going to overclock like crazy. Now we at retail we ended up getting extremely lucky and we got a chip that reliably overclocks to 4.7 and 4.8 on a lot of motherboards. Now on this motherboard, pushed it all the way to 4.9 on 2 cores, 4.8 on the other cores, validated it.
And it was completely automatic. We literally just put the chip in, and we did have to jump through some hoops. You have to be running AI Suite 100.54. The newest one was 100.51. We had to work with ASUS in order to figure it out because we had some issues. And that one is available for download. There's a link to it in the article notes for the video that you're watching, and there's also a link to it on asus.com in their forums.
That's also the only way to really take advantage of the 4-way optimization. You need
a lot of the ROG boards, the 4-way optimization works differently. It's got presets on the ROG board, but on this one it actually sort of discovers what the optimal settings are. So
it's just like they do on the channel boards. It actually goes through and tests and does it the way that we demonstrated when JJ was in town.
Yeah, and we hit 4.9 on 2 cores, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah, and it's also really impressive that that's what it hit using 4-way optimization. Instead of so that's not like us manually going, and that's 4-way optimization doing its job. So that's really cool as well. Also with the AI Suite 3, of course, we have Fan Expert 2. And you can, control all your fans, make it nice and cool and quiet, set all the variables up. But you can also do all that in the UEFI. It's not quite as robust as Fan Expert 2, but you can do quite a bit in the UEFI. Also, this board does have Direct Key, which is a button on the motherboard. You press that, and when you reboot, you go straight into the UEFI, so you don't have to sit there and spam the delete key, the F2, F12, just smack the keyboard all day long. You don't have to do that. You just press the button, and it goes right into the UEFI, which is cool.
The last couple of machines we built, we actually don't even hook up the reset button. We hook the reset button up to the direct key header. So when you've got a machine assembled, instead of hitting the reset button, you just hit the reset button, and then the next time the machine boots, you're going to go into the BIOS.
Yeah, I generally don't even use the reset button. I either do a hard reset by holding the power button for 8 seconds, or I reset or reboot just from the OS. So I'd say most of us are not using the reset button anymore, and if we are, we could probably do without, and the direct key it's just way handier to be able to hit the reset button, go straight into the UEFI after it reboots. It's really kind of cool.
There is a utility, too, if you don't want to do that you can run in Windows, and then the next time you reboot, you'll end up in BIOS, which is kind of nice, or in the UEFI, which is kind of nice. My favorite feature is definitely the Marvell controller, because you can set up an SSD, and when you're normally with this SSD caching thing, when you write files, you're limited to the speed of your mechanical hard drives. But with this Marvell controller, you can set it up in such a way that when you're writing files, they just write to the SSD, and then the controller takes care of later moving them off the SSD to the mechanical hard drive. So if you've got a whole bunch of video files that you need to, like you're getting ready to process 100 gigabytes of video, you just copy it, and it'll copy it at SSD speeds until the SSD is full. And it keeps all the files that you frequently use on the SSD, which is nice. Okay, let's talk about the ports on the back. So at the back, the first thing that you notice is we got 4 USB 3 ports, which is kind of nice. 2 of those are through an AS Media controller or hub, and then there's 2 USB 3 on the motherboard, of course. There's mini DisplayPort that's not Thunderbolt. If you want Thunderbolt, you're going to have to go with the Z87 Deluxe. It's mini DisplayPort and full-size DisplayPort, as well as HDMI. There's an optical audio. And there's 4 USB 2.0 and a PS2 mouse keyboard combo. You got 6 audio connectors, and then the direct key for updating your BIOS, and 2 eSATA.
Now the audio on this is the Realtek ALC 1150. It's 8-channel HD audio codec.
And then my favorite feature, 2 Intel NICs.
Yeah, that's mine too. Now with the DisplayPort on this, you can daisy chain up to 3 displays off the DisplayPort, and each of those will run at 1080p at 60 Hertz. As far as 4K support goes, it'll run 4K, but only at 24 Hertz. I can't imagine there'll be a lot of you guys out there running 4K, you know, with the onboard video, but if you're one of the guys who's going to be doing that, you know, you can run 24p video and it'll look okay. And you can do like web browsing and day trading or whatever you do with the 4K monitor other than game. I would not game at 24 Hertz, and onboard video would melt if you tried to game at 4K anyway. So
it's another cool feature that ASUS has on some of their boards now, especially the boards that are geared more toward the higher end, is the PSU detection with Dr. Power. And what happened there is that people at ASUS tell us that they're getting a lot of motherboards that users were reporting DOA or with strange issues, and they figured out that it was like phantom AC current on the DC lines from the power supply because the power supply was weak or going out, because the temptation is always, you know, it's like, oh, I'll just recycle my power supply. And so Dr. Power is an extra monitoring circuit that looks for common power supply failure modes and surges and things like that. And so when you boot up your computer, it'll actually tell you it's like surges detected from power supply, shut down to protect motherboard and things like that.
So all in all, you can see this is going to be really good for enthusiasts, really good for people who want to get some work done. It's going to be good for, I'd say, most of the people in those two categories. It's going to be good for like 90% of them. Some of the other ones are going to need to step up to something bigger. And if you're purely gaming and, you know, don't need a lot of the features, you only need one NIC or something like that, you may want to look at the ROG line. Like the Hero is a good entry point on that one. And then there's also, you know, if you want just, you know, Wi-Fi and all that sort of thing on board, take a look at the channel series. There's some of those that have, you know, built-in Wi-Fi, like the Deluxe Dual. That just has pretty much everything. So there's a lot of different options here, but this is, if I was building a Z87 full-size system, I would go with this motherboard.
I should say it's my favorite Z87 motherboard overall, except for ITX, because ITX is just so small and cute.
We can just classify that this is the favorite large one.